Hello, everyone. We're just letting people in before we get started, and then we'll get going.
Okay, shall I start?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So first of all, I'm Daniele Metilli. I'm a research fellow at University College London. And today I'm presenting about the Wikidata Gender Diversity Project, which is a one-year project funded through the Wikimedia Research Fund. I will share my slides now. Please please interrupt me if there is some problem with the slides. Otherwise, I will start. Okay, so the presentation is titled, "How do you model my gender? Studying gender representation in the Wikidata knowledge base." I want to mention my co-authors, Beatrice Melis, Marta Fioravanti, and Chiara Paolini. This is very much a team project. The project is called Wikidata Gender Diversity, abbreviated WGEDI. We look at gender diversity in Wikidata, focusing in particular on marginalized gender identities from a queer and intersectional feminist perspective. This is quite different from previous perspectives on gender in Wikidata, or also in Wikipedia, for example, that have focused very much on the gender gap between men and women and not very much on marginalized identities. There are many such identities, of course. We put some flags here, but there are many more. Our motivation is that those gender identities that fall outside the gender binary suffer discrimination and systematic erasure in society. And this kind of discrimination and erasure impacts any kind of gender or sexual diversity, including trans people, non-binary people, but also intersex people, and also any kind of gender non-conforming people, anyone who falls in some way or another outside of the traditional Western view of gender. Some facts. Now, I believe this to be true, and someone criticized me when I did a previous presentation about this, but I still believe them to be true. Gender is not binary. I ask if someone believes that gender is binary, they should prove it. It shouldn't be us that we have to prove a negative. Okay, it is not possible to prove a negative. Gender is very complex because it has so many aspects to it. And this image is the gender unicorn. It is not done by us, but it is useful to explain the complexity. It is somewhat simplistic still, so it is not perfect. But there is a difference between gender identity, gender expression, sex assigned at birth, physical attraction, emotional attraction, pronouns, gender modality, such as cisgender, transgender, and these variables are independent from each other. So, for example, you cannot infer someone's gender from their pronouns. Or from looking at someone, you cannot decide or understand what gender identity, what is the gender identity. Also, I need to mention the gender diversity. So identities that are not cisgender man or cisgender woman are not a new phenomenon. They have been, and we, let's say we, have been on this planet since forever. And this is well attested in historical documents. And now, Wikidata is a free and open knowledge base, and it is collaborative, and it is multilingual. It is a very cool project maintained by a community of users that is doing its best, their best to maintain and improve the project. Wikidata acts as central storage for the structured data of other Wikimedia projects, including Wikipedia, but also many other Wikimedia projects. And the data from Wikidata is reused in many other projects outside, and I believe thousands of different projects. So what happens in Wikidata influences a lot of other projects. And this is why we believe that studying Wikidata is so important. Because, for example, the representation of gender and the data about gender that is found in Wikidata will be and is being imported and reused in many other projects. When it comes to biographical data, Wikidata currently represents data about 8 million people and more, including sensitive data such as gender identity, sexual orientation, and ethnicity, for example. In this example, we have a non-binary person from Italy, born on 1 January 1990 in Rome. This is just a fictional example. So data is expressed using statements connecting an entity or item, as they are called in Wikidata, to a value through a property. So this is a triple statement. Which of course you are familiar with from the semantic web. I want to say also Wikidata is compatible with semantic web and linked data with the linked data framework. When it comes to the governance of Wikidata, the community adopts policies through user discussions following a consensus-based process, very similar to what is done in Wikipedia. So it is the same model. This is ostensibly democratic. The goal is for it to be democratic, but there are some power structures at play, as in any democratic system as well. And there are some issues there. I also want to mention the data subjects. This is a term that is used in, especially in the European Union with GDPR, but I say the people who are represented are not involved in any decisions regarding data about them, because following the Wikipedia model, the data subjects are not allowed to edit their descriptions, their own descriptions in Wikidata. They can request, but they cannot be directly involved. This is a bit of a problem, or let's say a big problem with sensitive data and personal data in general. In our project, we have 3 research questions that we're interested in. The first one is the model. We call it how the users have modeled gender in Wikidata. The second question is what? I will say also who. So the gender data that is actually represented. So who is there and what data is represented about them? And the third question is why. Now, for why, the approach that we took is to look at user discussions, because Wikidata records every user discussion. So it is quite easy to go there and look at discussions about gender by the community. So we are not doing, at this stage, interviews with the community. Some other projects are planning to do this, which I believe is also a very good approach. The project outcomes that we will have at the end are the project was supposed to end in August, but it has been extended until December. But still, we plan to publish these outcomes before then. The first outcome will be the Wikidata gender timeline, a complete timeline of gender modeling in Wikidata. Wikidata is a 10-year project. Now we have reconstructed the most important events throughout the history of Wikidata when it comes to gender. The Wikidata gender dashboard features accurate statistics about gender identities in Wikidata. So we are presenting the data that is there, but focusing specifically on marginalized identities. And the third is the discussions. So we took the user discussions from, Wikidata, and we build the corpus of user discussions and analyze it. This is called Wikidata Gender Talk. When it comes to the timeline, I wanted to show briefly the current version that we have. So we have a timeline that scrolls, and you can, and it is interactive, and you can see the events. Everything that happened is classified. The events are linked to each other if they are related, contextualized. This is not yet public because we have not finished studying the data. But this is just a short, very simple demo of how it works for now. It will also link to Wikidata pages and contextual data potentially, of which we have some. Now, we are following this framework of data care and data repair. In the early years of Wikidata, we see that there was a lack of care about gender modeling. This was not because the users didn't care about Wikidata or were just careless people in general. They weren't. It's just that gender was not the focus. And I will explain later why. Due to mistaken assumptions, gender data was represented in a problematic way. Mistakes were made, and later on it was necessary to adopt practices of data repair. The main property that is used to represent gender is called P21, sex or gender. From the start, we see that the label is ambiguous because it is not clear if it refers to gender. So it is sex assigned at birth. I don't say biological sex because biological sex is very problematic, as a very problematic definition. I say sex assigned at birth or gender identity. But these are two different things because you can have a certain sex on the document, for example, but a different gender identity. So what is it? It is still unclear in Wikidata. And both things are represented with the same property, which is one of the sources of the ambiguity and issues with gender data. The way we see it is that the users at the beginning were mostly interested in completeness. There was a small amount of users who cared a lot about accuracy and wanted to have, for example, every statement should have a source. Every statement should be imported from a reliable source, and everything should be documented. But most users cared about making the project grow as fast as possible, because then it would be successful. So it was a different kind of care. Okay, it's not that there was a lack of care in the sense of not caring about the project. It's just that the focus was on something else. And completeness won, because in 6 months, 70% completeness was reached, and then 95%. And then, of course, more data was added about more people, so this fluctuated a bit. But yeah, still the completeness stayed very high, but at what cost? So the only missteps were that initially the users thought every human must have a sex or gender, and only one of a certain set of allowed values, and these values are only male, female, and intersex, because they focused on sex. But then what about non-binary people, for example? What about transitioning between a certain identity to another identity? This was not considered. And so, of course, some users since the beginning came up and said, but wait, there are some problems here, but they weren't able to change things very quickly. And so what happened instead was that gender was populated about everyone that was in the knowledge base at the time. So in the first couple of years of the project, initially this was done manually by the users, but then it started being imported from Wikipedia, which is not a reliable source, imported from external databases, which may or may not be reliable, but users were not very careful with this. Imported from personal names, and imported from, in some cases, from pronouns. So this is very problematic, because personal names are masculine in some language, feminine in another language. I can make the example of my name, which is masculine in Italian. If you read it in another language, such as French, it sounds female, feminine, but I'm non-binary. So, but then the user started developing a much more complex gender taxonomy. Still, there is a separation between sex and gender identity. I don't have time to go into it. There is a big non-binary umbrella with many identities that are considered subclasses of non-binary. There are some issues with the classification. We're doing work, for example, comparing this to a classification done by expert people in the Homosaurus project. So this is something that we're planning to publish later. When it comes to statistics, this is the current status. There is a big gender gap between men and women. A small amount of non-binary people, just 1,000 and 100 something intersex people. We include, of course, trans men among men and trans women among women, even though Wikidata distinguishes between trans men and cis men and trans women and cis women. But still, there is a significant underrepresentation that is both for non-binary, intersex, trans men and trans women compared to the prevalence of this population in society. These are statistics about non-binary gender identities. There is the big non-binary umbrella, and then there are other identities: gender fluid, agender, gender queer, two-spirit, and 43 other people with different identities that I didn't list here, but we reported them in our initial publication. We also did some work on about specifically non-binary people to map birth years, places, this is skewed towards the present and the global north, which of course I include Australia and the global north, and but especially the United States. Trans men and women have had a very problematic representation in the past because they were described using the wrong labels, wrong descriptions. These were corrected later. There was a wrong classification in the sense that for 2 years, trans women were not considered women and trans men were not considered men, which was very problematic. We found dead naming, we found misgendering, editors during gender transitions, at least when the transition is announced. There are issues with gender properties, such as mother, father, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, stepfather, stepmother. Some of these were corrected. Sibling was particularly problematic. It took a long time because of linguistic issues, because some languages don't have a term for sibling in a non-binary way. Mother, father were never replaced until recently when a parent property was created, but this parent property has not been widely adopted. So this is still an issue. Finally, about Wikidata user discussions, we have this corpus of user discussions that we have started to analyze with computational linguistics, discourse analysis, topic modeling techniques, quantitative and qualitative analysis. This is one example of a result from topic modeling, where we see the emergence of some clear topics of discussions, and also we can see, not here, but from other from our publication, if you look at it, you can see that there has been an evolution of over time. The publication is called Non-Binary Gender Representation in Wikidata. You can find it at this address on our website, but it will come out as part of this book at X-Link Data in a few days. So we're very happy about this. We also have 2 proposals accepted for publications in Internet Histories and Communication, Culture and Critique, 2 very good journals. These will come out much later because it takes a long time to publish. Let's talk, sorry, I'm a bit late now. I will try to speed up. So I said before, there are practices of data repair. So over time, the community has evolved their understanding of gender. So there has been a growth in the understanding and the inclusion, both by individual users, but also by users groups, such as the Wiki Project LGBT, which is on Wiki, but also by advocacy groups, such as, for example, Art and Feminism, and cross-project initiatives, such as the excellent Queering Wikipedia conference. And I want to conclude by saying collaboration is key. This is our project, but there are many other projects that are tackling this problem and looking at it, both in Wikipedia and Wikidata and related projects. So we hope to be able to finish this work, publish the project outcomes, and then also publications. But also one thing that we aim to do is to develop a set of recommendations about improving Wikidata policies around gender representation, not just with our opinions, but also with input from other projects and the community itself. So we hope to start this discussion, which is difficult, but we need to find solutions to the issues that still remain. Thank you very much. And yeah, we have, sorry, just 4 minutes for questions, but I'm here also if you can find my email on the website, and feel free to send me an email in case you have further questions. Thank you. Okay, let me check the chat. Okay, I don't see any questions at the moment. Feel free to ask any questions. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daniel, for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
So for the time that we have left, we'll be picking up questions from the Slack channel, if there are any.
I just wanted to say this work is long overdue, so thank you very much for doing it. I'm curious to know if you were involved at all in the taxonomy of developing new vocabulary for Wikimedia, or for the the standards for new vocabulary.
No, I haven't been involved. I mean, our group has not been involved. We've had discussions with several other groups and other projects, but we have not been involved with this yet. We started the project actually in 2021, but we got funding only from the end of 2022. So and we started from the beginning and analyzing the history. So this took a long time to do, and we are only now getting to the point where we can start to think about maybe we can propose some changes, right? Because first we need to understand why things were done in a certain way. Otherwise, if we go to the community and say, you need to do things this way because it is better, yeah, of course, the community will reject this because there are reasons why things have been implemented in a certain way. So we need to understand this and understand how, what is the best way to change the taxonomies, the ontology of gender in Wikidata, and the policies. Yeah.
Thank you. It looks like there's some questions in the chat.
Okay. So there is a question: what if folks don't want the gender identity or other sensitive info to be recorded? Yeah, this is a very problematic thing, because it is not possible for someone to say, I don't want my gender to be there. I mean, in the sense that even if someone goes and removes it, it is very often just put back, because gender is added often through automated means. It is not possible to check. There is no way to technically for the data subject to say, don't record my gender, and for this to stick. So also following the model of Wikipedia and the policies there, people are discouraged from editing their own descriptions due to conflict of interest. But in this case, of course, if someone says, like it happened to me, that my gender was recorded as male, and then I went and changed it to non-binary, you know, but because it was an error, but there was no reliable source according to the definition of that is used by Wikidata and Wikipedia, that stated that my gender was non-binary, because this was not published on in a secondary publication. You know, there are all these rules about reliable sources. So this needs to change, I think. People need to be able to say, to have more say in this kind of sensitive description about them. And the problem is that gender has not been considered sensitive as much as, for example, sexual orientation or ethnicity, which are treated much differently in Wikidata. I don't have time to talk this further, but thank you very much. We can
Thank
continue the
you.
conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so
elsewhere.
much, Daniel. Thank you for the wonderful presentation and the questions answered. And right now, I think we'll have to close the session because of time. Thank you all for joining once again this session. Thank you to everyone for joining. And then don't forget to drop your questions in the Slack channels and it will be attended to. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.